Well,
Okay, we are now live. Welcome to the show, everyone. Well, the whole West seems to have lost its mind slowly over the past several decades. One of the places that this is most clear is across the pond of the United Kingdom in general, and Great Britain in particular. Another comedian was just arrested in London for making 3 rather mild tweets. Furthering the war on speech over there is also a bizarre bill meant to stop offensive banter in pubs, restaurants, soccer fields. All right. Even worse, there has been a renewed push for digital ID in Britain. But that stuff can't happen here, right? Well, a new Rasmussen and Heartland Institute poll casts some doubt on that. We are going to talk about all of this in episode 509 of the In the Tank podcast. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea, Lueken, your host, and we have a full house today, which I'm so stoked about. All right, so we have Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute. We also have Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute, and Chris Talgo, Editorial Director and Socialism Research Fellow at the Heartland Institute in his new office. We were going to be joined today by another special guest, but she wasn't able to make it, unfortunately. So, boy, it's almost like a staff meeting. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, staff meeting that the whole world gets to watch if they feel like it. Thousands of people every week, which is pretty cool. You know, you joke that is joke, Linnea, but literally that was kind of the thinking of the In the Tank podcast. That's why it's called In the Tank. It was intended to give fans of the Heartland Institute, fans of liberty, just kind of an inside or a window into what we talk about all the time anyway. As a think tank, we talk about big ideas, we talk about what's going on and how the principles of liberty and smaller government and individual liberty apply to those things. So welcome. This is really In the Tank today.
Absolutely. So before we get started here, you guys, as always, if you want to support the show, you can go over to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. You can also click the thumbs up to like this video, and remember that sharing it helps to break through some of YouTube's suppression. Even just leaving a comment here helps us too. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a nice review. Alrighty, guys. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. I started to thank you, and then we got cut off by the intro starting, so I'm sorry about that.
Well, I'm glad to be back, and it's good to be home, and looking forward to a great episode here.
Absolutely. All right, guys, so we're going to get right into it with Unhinged. Do we have a drop for that today or no?
Oh, we do.
Awesome. Okay, so this keeps happening. Another comedian has been arrested for making jokes in the UK, and I think this is actually this particular comedian's second time being arrested for jokes. This just keeps happening. So this time it was comedian Graham Linehan, creator of the IT Crowd and Father Ted, and he's been arrested for cracking some highly offensive and dangerous jokes about transgenders, especially transgender men in women's bathrooms. So here's what Newsweek says about it. The Metropolitan Police did not identify Linehan by name, but a spokesperson said on Monday, 1st of September, at 1 p.m., officers arrested a man at Heathrow Airport after he arrived on an inbound American Airlines flight. The man in his 50s was arrested on suspicion of inciting violence. This is in relation to posts on X. After being taken to police custody, officers became concerned for his health and he was taken to a hospital. His blood pressure was spiking a bit at being arrested over this, understandably. His condition is neither life-threatening nor life-changing, and he has been bailed pending further investigation. So Graham himself wrote about all of this on his Substack. It's quite a funny read, actually, for how depressing it is. And he included screenshots of the posts that police found so dangerous. So he wrote in his Substack, "The moment I stepped off the plane at Heathrow, 5 armed police officers were waiting. Not 1, not 2, 5. They escorted me to a private area and told me I was under arrest for 3 tweets. In a country where pedophiles escape sentencing, where knife crime is out of control, where women are assaulted and harassed every time they gather to speak, the state had mobilized 5 armed officers to arrest a comedy writer for this tweet." And so here are the tweets, if we scroll down a little bit in the Substack, which I will read for the audio listeners. He said in the first, "If a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls." The second is, he tweeted, "A photo you can smell," accompanied by the picture of a trans protest of some kind. And then, "I hate them, misogynists and homophobes. F them." All right, so we were going to try to have Lois Perry on here to ask her about how careful she has to be on X and other platforms. She couldn't make it, but guys, this seems really mild, these couple of tweets. I've seen far more vile and threatening messages with explicit calls to violence directed towards like J.K. Rowling, for example, from, the activist class. And you never hear about those people being arrested for that sort of thing. So what's going on here?
This is a good impulse on the part of Graham Linehan, and it's interesting because the laws and enforcement in Britain seem calculated to stop people from doing good things, from following their best impulses. Linehan clearly wants to protect women, and in fact, in another post, he cites dozens and dozens of cases where women have been assaulted in these invasions of their space by people claiming to be women. So this is a terrible thing, obviously, but it is interesting that it's as if they're trying to create a new culture where your best impulses are suppressed and your worst impulses are allowed to go free and use your imagination to do anything you like out there. And then it's creating certain favored groups and certain disfavored groups. And the disfavored groups literally get arrested and jailed and imprisoned for complaining about these things, not for doing evil, but just for exposing these evils that are being done. It's a sick situation, and boy, am I glad that we have dodged the bullet here in the United States, and I sure hope that Britain will change their mind about these things.
Yeah, and we've got quite a few, listeners in the UK, so I'd like to see in the, the audience comments there what you guys think about all of this. And yeah, hi, Ian. And so do you guys have to, and this is a question for our British audience, but do you guys have to watch what you say on X and other places? Are you worried that, the coppers are going to come busting your door in the night if you say something spicy on Instagram or something? Let us know, because I want to know how bad it is.
Well, Linnea, this does not apply only to British citizens, because this man is an Irish citizen. So he happened to fly from the United States to Heathrow Airport, and he was then arrested by the British authorities. Nigel Farage, one of my personal heroes and a friend of the Heartland Institute, he's the leader of the UK Reform Party. He was in front of Congress yesterday, and I watched some of the hearing, and he was going back and forth with people like Jamie Raskin, who was saying that, oh my gosh, what you're doing here is you are trying to perpetuate hate speech and all this kind of stuff, and that's what this really boils down to. I mean, Nigel Farage, he evoked Voltaire, and he said, "Wait a second, one person's hate speech is not necessarily another person's hate speech, and there's a fine line between that." And that's what I think this really boils down to. And Nigel did a very good job of going through the history of how the United Kingdom, since it joined the European Union, and now it's obviously no longer part of it, but during the period it was in the European Union from 1973 to 2020, how it Europeanized a lot of its free speech laws. And he thinks that this was a huge mistake. And, I'm going to take a very optimistic tone here because I'm going to be the optimist on this podcast from now on. And according to the polls, Nigel Farage's Reform Party is definitely in the lead. It looks like they will win the election. I think it's slated to be in 2029. It's not exactly like the elections here in the United States, but if if Nigel does come into power and becomes the next leader of the United Kingdom, he said he is going to make a huge effort to try to get rid of all these laws. So these laws, like the Online Safety Act, I mean, there's a ton of them that can be used against not only British citizens, but an American who says something on X and then goes to London, they can be arrested for that. So that's a really scary thing. And I want to make sure that people understand this is not just being applied to British citizens. This applies to everyone in the world.
Yeah, you guys might recall back in February, J.D. Vance gave an address over in Europe. I forget exactly what, confab of bureaucrats he was talking to, but he warned about this. He talked about this, and Donald Trump has actually even hinted, I think, on occasion that look, if we're going to be allies, I mean, I thought the West shared values of things like free speech and freedom of association, and apparently we don't share those values at all. The United States doesn't with the United Kingdom, which used to be called the special relationship between our two countries. Now that relationship is the fact, and Chris rightly points it out, Graham Linehan is not a citizen of the United Kingdom. He's an Irish citizen. So the idea that 5 armed members of the Metro Police Department arrest him as he gets off a plane in Heathrow at London Heathrow's airport, as Nigel Farage pointed out, testifying, perfect timing in front of Congress yesterday. If they can arrest him, they can arrest me. They can arrest you if they look at your tweets and don't like them. And Chris, as you observed and described, the repulsive member of Congress, Jamie Raskin from Maryland, talking about, well, this is hate speech. I'm sorry, guys. There's really no such thing as hate speech. This whole idea that we have to qualify some sort of speech as hate speech, and that now we have to have legislation to prevent people from engaging in hate speech, is exactly where people like us, civil libertarians, warned this was going a long time ago. I was in journalism for 18 years before coming to the Heartland Institute. I spent half that time as an editorial writer and columnist. And I remember, and this is back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And at that time, if you might be old enough to remember, is when we started to see laws, hate crime laws. And I wrote against those sorts of things because you were legislating the motivation of the killer, or basically you were committing a thought crime that was considered just as bad as killing somebody. I mean, if you murder someone, that's by definition an act of hate. That is, but we had these enhanced sentences for so-called hate crimes for certain protected classes of human beings, but not other sorts of human beings. And here we are now, where we're talking about so-called hate speech, where a comedian, for making a joke on an American-based social media platform, can be arrested by a country in which he is not even a citizen, and brought up on charges of what? I guess offending people. Look, too bad. We have to get away from this idea that if you take offense at something, that there must be punishment by law, including fines or jail time, to the person that you point your finger at and say, this person offended me. What's so amazing, and we've talked about this in this context on this podcast before, is J.K. Rowling, who I disagree with probably on 99% of the principles she holds. But she holds one principle, or maybe two, that are important and should be shared by everybody, no matter what political party you belong to, what country you live in, if you live in a free country, or even what ideological outlook you have on the world is. And that is the idea of free speech, and also the idea that a biological male is not an actual biological female and should not be invading female spaces, which are separate from men, for a whole host of very, very good reasons, safety being among them. And just stating this now, even in a joke, and even stating in a way that you might not, because you think it would be mean or uncouth, or perhaps even a little cruel, too bad. Get on with your life. No, we live now well, at least our listeners and viewers from the United Kingdom live in a country in which if the government and the government's protected classes disagree with the way you think about something, they can put you in jail. Now, look, I wouldn't use that kind of language, but that's just me. But everybody on principle should be together on the idea that this is wrong and actually very, very dangerous. Because if you do not have the freedom to speak your mind, you don't really have any freedom at all. And the reason why Graham Linehan was arrested is the same reason why under the Biden administration, we saw censorship of conservatives. We saw censorship of people having their YouTube channels taken away. People make a living on YouTube, not us, unfortunately, but a lot of people make a living on YouTube. And they were having their channels demonetized, sometimes even taken down altogether because of government pressure. And the idea is to make an example of these so-called bad actors to make sure that nobody else speaks too. This is like, putting a head on a pike out in front of the castle. That's a warning. And these sorts of arrests and this sort of attitude is a warning to others to not speak their minds, whether it be on trans rights or any of that stuff, whether it be on immigration, or in the past, whether it was on COVID or vaccines, or heck, we talk about it a lot on this channel, climate change, because that was the next one in the queue. This needs to be talked about a lot. I know I've seen a lot of podcasts already talking about this. This is a big international story, and it should be. And I'm not as optimistic as Chris, but I will express hope that this could be a turning point, especially in the UK, where we thought that they protected and appreciated free speech the way the Americans do. I know they don't have a First Amendment, but in principle, the idea that you should be able to speak your mind is a universal Western ideal, and it needs to be protected. And this is a great case to make people pay attention, because this is very dangerous.
Jim, can I just add on to that? So you brought up the immigration thing. So Nigel, in his testimony yesterday, also brought up the case of a woman who is a British citizen, and this was in 2024. She had the audacity to tweet mass deportation now. Guess what? She was sentenced to 31 months in prison. That just blows my mind. I mean, I cannot believe that. It was actually, and that was upheld by an appellate court in Britain. And, it's interesting because I did a lot of research for this. I wrote an article about this morning. So I just found this so, intriguing. And there are a lot of people in Britain who do not agree with this. I mean, this is, just hearing and reading, things from British citizens who were aghast at this. But it also is, coming up at the, police officers are saying, hey, wait a second, we don't want to be doing this. And even Keir Starmer said, maybe we have better and bigger things that we need to be worrying about. So, I hope that this is one of those cases in which there's such a backlash, against it, that they do decide to, change the repeal. Nigel said he would repeal the Online Safety Act first thing when he comes into office. So that's why I am somewhat optimistic. It just seems like they went way overboard here. And it looks like, at least to me, that ordinary British people are saying, wait a second, this is, too much. And police officers don't want to be involved in this. They know that there's, much bigger problems for them to be dealing with. So, You know, it's a very scary situation. So I hope this just brings a lot of attention to the situation, especially this latest arrest. I mean, this is just insane.
Yeah, I mean, we thought we hit kind of peak clown world years ago when Mark Meekin, Count Dankula was arrested and eventually fined for just like making a funny video where he taught his dog to raise its paw to Sig Heil. So, and he was a Scottish citizen, I believe. So that's, you know, it's only gotten worse from there.
Well, and I know this is not a perfect analogy, but I do remember that someone was put in jail in the United States for a meme that he made about Hillary Clinton. And,
You know, yep.
So, I mean, I know that's not the exact same thing, but to me, it's in the same vein.
Yeah.
Where it's like, guys, come on, there is room for comedy. There is room even for some crass, offensive language in this world. And, you know, maybe this is a little bit of the, you know, the snowflake mentality and all that kind of stuff where it's like, whoa, you know, I remember a time, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to people just kind of like, you know, it's like sliding this out the back and saying, yeah, that's your opinion, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, to me, it is just so stunning.
Well, the bills are rolling on. Our second topic here today is that there is a continuing war on speech in Britain. We have a really remarkable story here. There's a new bill coming up, and so the Free Press talks about it a bit in this article. On the night of Wednesday, July 16th, the Labour government's Employment Rights Bill passed its second reading in the House of Lords. If the bill goes into law in its current form, and there's not much to stop it now, Britons can be prosecuted for a remark that a worker in a public space overhears and finds insulting. The law will apply to pubs, clubs, restaurants, soccer grounds, and all the other places where the country gathers and all too frequently ridicules one another. The bill has been dubbed the Banter Bill in a last stand flourish of native wit, but it's no joke. It is further proof of the state-sponsored decline of free speech in Britain, a decline rightly criticized by Vice President J.D. Vance, who, despite the demands of his day job, still finds time for forthright banter on X. All right, so according to the Parliament Bill's website, it's currently in the final stages of being passed. So, yeah, I mean, Vance got scorched in the media over there for accusing Europe and especially the UK and Germany for tearing apart their free speech rights. But he was right then, and he's even more right now. How to borrow a line from Greta, how dare they, how dare they, you know, accuse Vance of hyperbole when they go and do this, right? Jim, sorry.
Oh yeah. I mean, we have a video we can play that's related to this story that I came across. It was from Britain's GBN news channel, which is, I suppose, their version of Fox News, or it's certainly necessary if you don't want to be programmed by the BBC. Maybe we could play that as a bit of a launching point for some more commentary.
Absolutely.
Right, can we talk about this free speech in pubs, Renee? What's going on here?
Renee?
Well, just madness, I think. Just more of this madness employment bill from Angela Rayner, which really needs to be scrapped. Because if we're getting to the point where people are not able to talk about anything they want to talk about in a pub, which is where you talk about anything you want to talk about.
Yeah.
It's over. Pubs are over, you know, free speech is over. This whole bill is a disaster for employers and needs to be scrapped.
And because the Equality and Human Rights Commission is saying that if the way this bill could be interpreted, if you start giving your view on the transgender issue, for instance, someone can say, that's out of order.
Yeah.
Conversation over.
Your words offend me.
Exactly.
In my workplace, and therefore...
And the publican then may be required to end the conversation.
Oh, I hate
throw them out, or throw them out the pub.
I mean, it really is 1984. We are living it now, isn't it? It's newspeak. This is what you're allowed to say, nothing else.
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to the pubs bit, common sense would probably prevail, and I think it'd be very unlikely there would be any action taken in a pub. It could happen, but I think it's unlikely.
But the fact it could makes it wrong.
But the intention of this is to stop harassment in the workplace.
Yes.
So that's the idea.
See,
the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, 100%. And I wanted to play that clip, especially for the thing at the very end. So apparently one person on that panel was not a right-thinking person. and is just, oh, well, well, it probably wouldn't happen that they would throw you out of a pub for speaking wrong speak for a thought crime. But, the intention is to protect from harassment in the workplace. The idea that we don't have enough laws, especially in Britain, for this sort of thing. There's already employment laws here in the United States that if you have a legitimate case for harassment by your employer, you could have actionable. It could be actionable, and you can get redress for that in many different ways. But see, this is again, as you said, Chris, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It should a bill like this should not. As producer Andy put up on the screen, it passed the House of Commons. Yesterday it was on its third reading in the House of Lords, and now it's basically on its way to passage. It's in the amendment stage right now. If one of those amendments isn't every word in this bill is null and void, and if that doesn't pass, then the United Kingdom is in very big trouble. I mean, the pubs, as the woman pointed out, British pub culture is like. The American Revolution began in pubs here in the in the colonies, for crying out loud.
Well, that may well be kind of the point, isn't it, Jim?
I think that is exactly the point. And the idea that this would even get introduced in a free country, let alone this far along to passage in the UK, is very, very scary. And it's and actually, as you just said, Linnea, the guy is like playing dumb. It probably wouldn't be enforced in pubs. No, the purpose of this is to make sure it's enforced in pubs. Don't let there be any illusions about that. The purpose of this law is to stop people from speaking their mind if they oppose government policy. Period. That's what this is all about. And if you are not able to do that, you do not live in a remotely free country. And so this is very, very, very sad to see in the UK. It was nice to see these people on this panel push back at it, and I'm sure the majority of the British people are not in support of this. But you need to take to the streets then and make sure this stuff doesn't happen while you still can.
See, that's the exact kind of dangerous call to violence, Jim, that they're trying to stop in this.
I don't have any trips to London planned, but actually the president of the Heartland Institute does. He's going to be in trouble. I'll have to send him a text.
Yeah, careful. Well, yeah, no, it's terrible to see the way that everything is going over there. It's frightening, especially, we're kind of moving along quick here, but our main topic today is probably going to take a good amount of time. So this is good. But, especially now that they're starting to bring up the digital ID issue again. So the Daily Mail is reporting on this, saying Labour's big idea is ID cards for all. Blair wanted them years ago, and now as Macron demands action, Starmer takes interest. Every person in Britain could be forced to sign up for a digital ID card after Emmanuel Macron demanded action to tackle the scourge of illegal working. I've got comments about that, but let's go. Sir Keir Starmer told the cabinet he would be exploring options around the concept as part of a wider package of reforms designed to make it harder for illegal migrants to live and work here. Downing Street confirmed ministers are examining proposals for a digital ID scheme 15 years after the idea was abandoned following an outcry about the impact of civil liberties. Under one option, anyone applying for a new job would be required to produce their digital ID to demonstrate that they have the right to live and work in the UK. Similar provisions could also be introduced for those moving to new accommodation, making a benefit claim, or accessing public services. Labour ruled out ID cards as recently as July, with Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds saying the idea was not our approach. But Keir has been told by Mr. Macron to address pull factors, attracting migrants to Britain in return for French help in stopping the boats. Allies of the French president have warned the UK's lax rules make it an El Dorado for migrants. Questioned about the civil liberties row that ended the last bid to introduce compulsory ID cards, the spokesman said ministers believe the debate has changed since the last time we had this discussion, with people more relaxed about the idea of having to prove their identity online. All right. So I have a couple things to say about this one. So one, it always goes this way, doesn't it? This is what people mean when they give the example of boiling a frog in a pot, turning the temperature up slowly so that he doesn't notice he's been cooked. So and then again, they're claiming that this is because of the immigration issue, but wouldn't there be a better solution here, like just arresting and deporting illegal immigrants? And aren't all the immigrants coming from France, like between France, like using France as a stopover before they go to the UK? So what does Macron mean that the UK needs to handle this? They're in his country. So I'll pitch it to you guys, Sam. What if they just like arrested and deported people instead? Would that be better?
Yes, it would be better. It's interesting when you're getting pushed around by Emmanuel Macron, you are really weak. But it's not that he's weak. It's really that this is what he wants. The reality is behind all of this is that, yes, it certainly is all about making sure that any government approved policies receive only positive notice through the media, including social media. And so but the means to do that is, of course, to destroy those who step out of line. And what that does is it's intended to demoralize the population, especially the normies, normal people who just want to live normal lives and work and have some relaxation and maybe go to the pub and have a chat. And when you're in the pub, then if someone overhears you, they can call you out for offending them. But how does this actually work in reality? And how is it intended to work? In my view, it is intended to work the same way that the social media rules are working, which is that people that activists who are working to follow people who might speak out will then complain to the authorities and have these people arrested, thrown in prison. And this is exactly what happened to Graham Linehan. There's a particular individual who is very well connected, who has continuously complained to the government about things, about Linehan's tweets. So what this will do is it will be just like in the United States during the Biden administration, where the government uses people among the public to rat out other people and use the government to destroy their lives, which destroys all opposition. The way it was done during the Biden administration was that they went to the social media directly and said, if you don't want more rules on you, and if you don't want us doing everything we can to shut you down, then you will censor these particular ideas. And you better get your your systems set up so that those ideas don't get through. And that is exactly what the social media did. So this is all about the government using people within the society to destroy other people so that it will do two things. One, it will shut down opposition voices. But two, and perhaps the more important element, is that it will demoralize the people, the public, and make them more pliable because they believe that there is no way out and there is no alternative. What they're going to find, though, is that there is an alternative. It is already happening in Britain, and I believe that it is going to continue to rise in force. And that alternative is something that we may come to discuss, but it is actual reaction against the government that will ratchet up. There are very plausible papers and studies that show that Britain is heading toward a civil war. And I believe that those are accurate.
Okay, I got a couple questions here. So first of all, where's Bridget Macron when you really need her to slap some sense into Emmanuel? Because I mean, this is a great situation where, she could pull a Will Smith and we'd all be better off. So there's that. Second of all, this is like killing a mosquito with a sledgehammer. And third of all, It really is. Like you said, I mean, this is so backwards. We've got a problem with a small population of illegal immigrants. Therefore, all the British citizens, you're going to have a digital ID. Wait, that makes no sense. But this also, I think, does go to show that the slippery slope is true. The slippery slope does exist. Rahm Emanuel said in 2008, I'll never forget these words, never let a crisis go to waste. And here is a government-created crisis in which the United Kingdom said, oh, we're going to just allow all these, migrants from Northern Africa and wherever else to just come and come into our country. Oh, whoops, it's actually creating a big problem. They don't speak the language. They don't share the culture. They can't maybe, work, whatever it is. The British people should not be punished for that. That's just where I can't believe what's going on in Britain. Please.
It's crazy.
Please, Nigel, win.
Yeah. And Donnie made this point in the comments here. Hello, Donnie. In the chat, he said, mark my words, a digital ID is the foundation on which a future social credit score program will be built. And I think that's obviously the ultimate goal here, right? Like, I don't think anybody actually believes, considering they keep pushing the digital ID issue for like every subject under the sun, right? Mm-hmm. Our friend in New Zealand, Chris Nisbet, says that the line they're pushing in New Zealand is that a digital ID will keep the kids safe, probably because we don't have a big illegal immigration problem. So they just keep making up, new ways that the digital ID is the solution. But really, the point is they want the digital ID so that they can cut you off from different things depending on your social media posts and all of that. So yeah, it's bad.
They're not legitimate reasons. They are pretexts for an exercise of government power. I mean, in the case of this ID in Britain, it's like, all right, step one, allow mass third world migration for years and years at levels that no one can even comprehend. Step two, call anybody that notices the sudden change in cultural norms due to that third world migration, call them all racist. And then step three is require a government ID of those lifelong native citizens to address the mass migration problem that you created. And then step four, of course, is monitoring your every move with this ID and establishing a social credit system so that we actually live in Black Mirror. The great show it used to be great. Now it's just kind of good. Black Mirror was a creation of the United Kingdom's creative pop culture, and we are certainly living it and getting very close to living in it. There was one of the best episodes they had was one starring Bryce Dallas Howard that involved a social credit system that everybody was doing on their phones, and it ruined her life because she got downvoted a couple times. We are that exists in China. Donnie Kendall, who is in the audience today and was the former full-time host of this show and now is hosting other things. He's been on this topic for years and years and years, and we will continue to be on this topic for years and years because of all the things that need to be resisted. A national digital ID is basically the last step. Then you really are living in an Orwell novel, and it's a dystopian nightmare. So
just one other just quick thing to kind of tie this all together. So our friend from New Zealand mentioned that the digital IDs there are supposed to protect the children. As Nigel pointed out again and again during his congressional testimony yesterday, the Online Safety Act was supposed to protect the children from harmful content. Wait a second. You know what? I think that the parents should protect the children from quote unquote harmful content, not the government.
Yeah, it's, they'll use anything to get what they want. I had something and I lost it. It was at the tip of my tongue and I've forgotten what I was going to say. So we can just move on to the main topic here. I had something to close us out, but your great points overshadowed my great point in my own mind, and now I cannot remember what it was. Anyway, so all of this is not just meant to be, just bashing on the Brits today. We love our British audience. We have the best British and United Kingdom audience. But it could happen here is the point of this, right? We're not, we don't think that our leadership is so much more, virtuous or whatever, that that we could never slowly slide into the same kind of radicalism. It exists here too, though it's not secured as full of a foothold maybe in our government, laws the way that it has in the UK. And in our culture, I think we tend to be a bit more unruly. But still, some people seem to be more and more interested in far left politics. I'm going to read from a pre-release press release that Jim so kindly shared last night. But there is a little bit of cold water out here, and that is a new poll by StoppingSocialism.com, a project of the Heartland Institute and Rasmussen reports, found that support for radical socialist policies and candidates appears high among likely voters under the age of 40. According to the results of the survey, more than half of young American voters say that they want a socialist candidate to win the 2028 presidential election, including a shocking 35% of respondents who said they voted for Trump in 2024. Additionally, 76% of respondents said that they strongly agree or somewhat agree that major industries like healthcare, energy, and big tech should be nationalized to give more control and equity to the people, suggesting that increasingly more young American voters favor radical socialist policies. And the survey included 1,201 voters aged 18 to 39. And so that's kind of wild, guys. Chris, you worked on this issue a lot. You wrote an op-ed about it. Why would these young people be growing increasingly enamored with socialism of all things? I mean, like, nationalization of major industries is pretty extreme. That's not just, I'd like the usual standard boilerplate American democratic socialist, kind of wishy-washy stuff. This is like hardcore. So where do you see this going, or where did this come from?
Okay, well, I've got two things that I think are leading up to this. So number one, as most of the viewers know, I was a high school social studies teacher for 5+ years. I started my career here in the northern suburbs of Chicago at the high school that I actually went to, which shall be unnamed. And then I moved down to South Carolina and taught 5 full school years there. I was shocked, literally just like blown away, when during my student teaching, I was teaching world history, and I talk about this in an op-ed I just wrote. When it came time to the Russian Revolution, my quote unquote mentor teacher, who really, he just kind of threw me in there, was like, you figure it out. So he didn't really do much mentoring. However, when it came time to the Russian Revolution, I showed a documentary about it. And I remember he specifically told me to stop, and that he wanted to go in and give the other side, which was basically a pro-Bolshevism, pro-Marxism. The kulaks were actually, they kind of deserved. I mean, and I'm just sitting there going, I can't believe this is happening right now. Okay, fast forward to South Carolina. It was the same thing. It was the same thing in the government classes, socialism, collectivism. It just hasn't been done properly. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. So Linnea, what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't really surprise me that so many young people, 18 to 39 now, have a misguided view of socialism. They have been given a whitewashed version of it. And it's been happening for a very long time. It's been happening at the universities and colleges across this country for even longer, but it has seeped into middle school and high school in recent years. And that's a very dangerous precedent. So there's that. Okay. I also think, and some people might disagree with me on this, and that's good. And, debate is always good. Free speech, everybody. Good, good stuff. That several, I shouldn't say, well, a large portion of the 18 to 39 cohort, which I am a little bit older than, okay, grew up in a economy, post 2008 in particular, that is not a really robust free market economy. And I think that that's a big, big problem, because when they have grown up in a crony capitalist, big government, intrusive economy that's not really a free market economy, it makes them have a bad taste in their mouth towards free market capitalism. And I've tried to, make that point to a lot of my friends and people who argue that, well, free market capitalism is terrible. Look at the United States in the past 10 years. Well, that's actually not really free market capitalism. We've got Obamacare, we've got so many interventions, so much, government spending, blah, 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 that it's really has created disincentives, and it has skewed, the job market, the housing market, the healthcare market, all this kind of stuff. So I understand how they can be frustrated with the status quo. However, their solutions to the problems that we definitely do face would make things 10 times worse, not better. And that's really what kind of troubles me, is there doesn't seem to be many people on the democratic socialist, side of things that are saying, wait, just so you know, here's the problem. Here's why our free market economy is not working properly. And here are some ways to do that. They're just saying, take the whole thing, throw it in the garbage, and let's go Soviet Union 2.0. So that's a recipe for disaster, obviously.
Absolutely. And I want to read off some of the results from this thing. I'm going to go through some of the questions here. So there was a surprisingly large, as I said earlier, chunk that said that they'd like to see a Democratic Socialist candidate win in 2028. And the people who answered yes to that question were also asked, among the following options, which best describes the biggest reason you would like to see a Democratic Socialist candidate win the 2028 election? The respondents were then provided with 8 options. So the one that was selected the most for them was that housing costs were too high. And that's something we talked about last week, Sam. So I want to get your commentary on this. And that was followed by the economy unfairly benefits older, wealthier Americans, followed by the economy unfairly benefits large corporations. And, you can see why they would say that, right? But based on the way the things are. But the problem is, as Chris said, that they're attributing it to the wrong problem here. So Sam, I want to hear your commentary on this. It's that whole, the young people are being locked out of the American dream issue that we had last week. So let's go.
Yeah, certainly they're feeling it, that they are locked out of the dream. Now, you have to remember that younger people just have less money than people who are older. They've had less time to save, less time to earn. So they're going to have less money, and you're always going to have an arc of wealth where the older people are wealthier than younger people. That's a perfectly legitimate situation, but it can be very annoying when you have a system that does not provide the things that people want and need, above all, housing. And this is really more an effect of the overall structure of our system, and in particular, our money. The U.S. dollar has been devalued regularly over the years, and usually deliberately, where they say, okay, well, we'll have 2% inflation. That'll be our goal. And then 2.5 or 2.7 is okay. But what that does is that devalues the dollar over time, and that tends to go to the advantage of people who are lenders and not borrowers. And so over time, the value of housing has increased ridiculously. It's so expensive to buy a house now, and it's because the house is a real thing. The house is a real thing. Your dollar isn't.
Yeah, but Sam, one of the big reasons that we have such a shortage of housing, especially for people who live in suburbs like Buffalo Grove, where I live, is because of regulations. And that, I think, is the real core of this. The core of this is that the local governments have made it very difficult for new housing to be built. I read the Daily Herald, my local newspaper, on Sundays, and I always read stuff about the local zoning board said no to this, said no to that, said this and that, and that's what this is, I think, really about. It's big housing corporations like Pulte or whomever, they want to, of course, build houses. They want to sell houses to people. They're not being allowed to. So I think this is a government-created shortage. And if I really want to get cynical here, I think that this goes into the fact that the government doesn't want us to own homes. It wants us to be renters. It wants us to not buy cars and own cars. It wants us to use Uber. So I think this is part of a much larger problem here. I don't really think, I mean, the interest rates, the sky high rates, recently are kind of playing a little bit into this, but this is just a lack of housing. And it's because the government is making it difficult, if not impossible, to build housing.
That's quite true. And there has been, remember, a very large expansion of the US population, which was caused by immigration. Yeah. So what you're doing is you're suppressing the supply and you're increasing the demand. So that's going to jack up the prices. But on top of that, when you have inflation on top of all that, and it's regular inflation, you're going to make it very, very difficult for younger people to buy houses. Why? Because they have less money than older people. So when people don't have a stake in their community, and when they don't have a stake in the state that they live in and in the nation that they live in, they don't have land of their own. They don't have hard objects that they can look at, and instead all they have is social media and what do you call it, subscriptions to Netflix. Those aren't things where you say, oh, they'll never take that away from me. It's like, who cares about that stuff? The important things are your house, your land, your family. And what happens is that those things have been wrenched away from young people through all of these forces, whether it's deliberate or not, as a big plan to impoverish people and make them want socialism is actually immaterial at this point. It has happened, and it has raised the support for socialism. The teaching in the schools has done that as well. And what does socialism do? It simply gives more power to the government and takes it away from the people. And this is what we're having to fight right now, is the fact that you cannot even show people what a real free market economy looks like, because no one in our time has lived in one. Even Jim and I have not lived in a free market economy, and we are old. So that is a major problem. They don't know what that would look like. And our work here at the Heartland Institute, please support us, people, and tell all your friends to support us, because we're the really unique thin end of the wedge there, pointing out to people that no, we don't even have a free market, even here in the United States. And we can tell you what that would look like, because we've seen it in the past. We've had it in the past. We know how it works. And things like a real currency and real deregulation and real freedom work for people. And they are what will free young people to live better lives. So it's an absolutely important point that, no, we have not even seen what a free market would look like. So let's have one.
I'm a little bit younger than you and Jim, Sam, but I do remember in the 1990s when I was, growing up, that it did seem like we had a much more robust free market economy. I mean, my dad started a business in the early 1990s. It was successful. It just seemed like there was much more opportunities. I also wrote, when my dad graduated college, after working at the Quaker Oats company as a junior marketing guy for a couple of years, guess what? He was able to buy a car and start saving up for a home. That is just not the case for many college graduates, also because, they've got so much debt. My dad, he was able to work through college and pay for it. And so he graduated with no debt. So there's a lot of factors, I think, that are making it very difficult. And a lot of that is, once again, because of the government. The government got involved in, college lending. The government got involved in housing, obviously, big, blow up there. So I feel that the genesis of much of this is when the government comes in and says, we're going to make the, such and such marketplace better. What happens almost guaranteed every single time? The exact opposite. We're at 15 years after Obamacare was supposed to make healthcare more affordable and lower premiums, lower deductibles. I'm going to write about this soon because we are coming up close on the 15-year anniversary. The total opposite has happened. So that's what happens.
Yeah. Well, and two, I want to, call back to last week's show again. The crime issue is definitely part of it as well, because I actually don't think that it's that we don't have housing. I think that part of it is an immigration issue for sure, especially illegal immigration, but immigration at large has been, I think it like quadrupled after 1945. It's something insane like that. But the crime issue is making it so that entire like sections of cities and the like immediate suburbs around cities are unlivable for people because of how much crime is there. And there are tons of like empty houses and you know, ramshackle places. All of that could be housing. And so I think that's what people get annoyed about when they see, like, there was a debate a couple of months ago about opening up some BLM land for housing. And I hate the idea myself of opening up BLM land just to put like Section 8 on it. That's awful. I can't think of anything
And
worse.
we mean Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I forgot that we have there was another BLM that has apparently disappeared.
But Linnea, even that's a government sponsored activity. This should be done at the free market. If people are moving to North Carolina in droves, North Carolina should be having tons and tons of housing expansion. People are leaving the city of Chicago and they are moving to the northern suburbs, but the northern suburbs are not adding, upstart, first kind of housing. So therefore, people like me have to live in apartments and the rent keeps going up. And it just puts us in a situation where we can never get ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of these things, the short of this, or what we're getting to here, is that like it's no wonder, right? That kids, combined with the bad education and everything, you can't just look at these millennials basically and Gen Zers who are, becoming enamored of the promises of democratic socialists or socialists in general, that, we're going to fix this because this is capitalism's fault. The kids, don't have the education to know that this is not necessarily capitalism's fault, but also that they are facing genuine, serious economic hardship. And it's not, like I said last week, it's not avocado toast. That's not the cause of their problems. All right. I see it all the time. And that's one of the things that's turning young people against older generations is that, being told your entire life, well, you just have to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. I did it in, the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. So why can't you do it? Kind of attitude that young people get from older generations. And it's not helpful. And we are in completely different economic conditions than there were before. Like I said last week, I have friends who have college degrees, have applied to hundreds and hundreds of jobs for like one interview. And it's not because their resume isn't good. It's because it's that bad out there. It's very, very bad. All right. So that housing costs are too high is the number one most selected option under why they would support a democratic socialist candidate. The second one, the economy unfairly benefiting older, wealthier Americans. But we said, if you're older, you're going to be wealthier, probably. If you're doing things right, you are wealthier when you're older. And then the economy unfairly benefits large corporations. And that's another government-caused issue, right? Basically just bailing out all these big companies forever and ever, handing more and more power over the economy to large corporations. I think there was a lot of rightful bitterness that got generated during COVID when you saw places like Walmart being allowed to be open when mom and pop grocery stores had to shut down, that kind of thing. So yeah, we've just been, piled and piled and piled on. And so these kids are trying to look around and find something better. And so far, it seems to a certain extent, a lot of the right, even libertarians, have not been overly compelling, according to our polling here, in their alternative solutions. So this might be in part a messaging problem. Let's see here.
I was going to say, just Linnea, real quick, that the environmental regulations are also killing.
Of course,
a lot of housing construction. Think after World War II, when like Levittown was built and all these huge suburbs, they were built so fast. And nowadays, like I said earlier, I mean, if the zoning approval board actually gives them the green light. It's like 6 years later that they finally break ground, and then they've got to make sure that they only don't go this high, and there's a lot of that stuff as well here too.
Yep, absolutely. Some of the other questions that were in the poll that I found pretty interesting. There was one that asked for, like, who was, if you were voting for Trump or some other candidate, or did you not vote? Once again, it was mostly women that voted for Harris, according to the polling. Trump was about 50% men. 50% of men voted for Trump, according to this poll. And a significant amount of people, when they were asked, if the Democratic Party's presidential primaries were held today, and the candidates were Kamala Harris, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, Gavin Newsom, and Zohran Mamdani, who would you vote for? 36% of the total people who voted said Kamala Harris. So I don't quite know what to make of that. It's Ocasio-Cortez got one of the lower scores at 9%, which actually surprised me. I feared that it would be much higher. Mamdani got the bottom-most rating. Some other candidates, so people who are like, I'll take anybody else, I don't care.
I do think some of that's based on name recognition. Just want to throw that out there. Yeah.
No, I believe so as well. I absolutely do believe so. Newsom got only 9%. Sanders polled higher. So I do believe that most of this is a name recognition issue, but it is kind of funny. It cracked me up that 11% said that they just wouldn't vote if they were given all of these choices. And that was one of the higher segments of people. So that's great.
If I could only vote for those people, I might not vote either.
Yeah, that would be an awful difficult one. Yeah,
I think it's interesting that Ocasio-Cortez, who had been sort of laid out as the candidate of the future, the Democrat of the future, got so little support from the voters of the future and very much of the present time. I think that's very interesting, because Ocasio-Cortez has been very front and center about being a socialist, and Mamdani has been very front and center about it, and he got 4%. Newsom, very weak, only 9%. I think it's interesting because these are people who are self-described interested in socialism, and yet they overwhelmingly went for these so-called moderate, but let's say the least overtly socialist of that group in Harris. Yeah. And so I think it may have a certain amount to do with name recognition. It always does. But it's not as if these people have not heard of Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders or Gavin Newsom. They've heard of them. They don't like them. And that's very interesting.
Can I point out a couple of things on the crosstabs here on this poll that I found pretty fascinating? Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's worth reminding the audience that this poll was taken of just younger voters. So just voters between the ages of 18 and 39. So Linnea's generation and younger. And it should be also pointed out that these voters, and it actually leaned more on Democrats than it did Republicans, these voters still gave Donald Trump a 48% approval rating, which is better than the approval rating of Biden by miles, and even better than Obama's. And so it's this weird dichotomy of people who you could say are at least, Trump friendly, if not full-throated supporters, still hold these socialistic views. And one of the questions that really stuck out to me, and I'm really glad. I should also say we partner with Rasmussen. Heartland Institute does for these polls. The pollsters at Rasmussen are always not shocked, but just like amazed that we come up with these questions that end up with these results that can really dig down into what America is thinking about, especially when it comes to socialism. But one of the questions here was, do you agree or disagree with this statement? Major industries like healthcare, energy, and big tech should be nationalized and give more control and equity to the people. and it was 39% strongly agree, 37% somewhat agree. So what is that? That's 76%. Is that what that is? Did I add that right?
Yeah.
Think that major industries like healthcare, energy, and big tech should be controlled and run by the government. And something that is really shocking to me is that 40% of Republicans strongly agree with that socialistic statement. There is a major education problem in this country. I'm blaming you, Chris, that these people have come up through the system and don't, even if they are Republicans and even if they support Trump, think basically we need to nationalize industries like healthcare, energy, and big tech. All that would do is make, well, it's already done. We basically have government controlled healthcare, and it's very expensive, and you know, it's not quite like Canada, but it's not great. The free market is real. Yeah, Sam and I are old enough to remember. We're not even old enough to remember when the free market worked in healthcare either, because we're all younger than Medicare. I think, at least I am. But what do you think would happen if government controlled energy? We'd have very expensive energy and less of it, and we almost got that under Biden, as a matter of fact. And if they control, and what if the government ran big tech? We'd still be, I don't even know if we'd have any technology. We certainly wouldn't have AI if government was running big tech. And so to have these socialistic views, again, I was not able to be on the podcast last week, although I did check in on the road from the Ohio Turnpike, and I really enjoyed it, that discussion. But it's weird. I mean, it's not weird, but it is no wonder that younger people in America feel left out of society, feel left out of this economy, feel that if the economy ever gets better, and I think it's going to get better, that they will be left behind. It's not surprising they have that attitude, because they've come up and they haven't been able to afford things, and things are expensive, and it's hard out there. And it's and saying, again, my generation and older, saying, hey, tough it out. I mean, I didn't own a home until I was in my late 40s, and that was in the Trump economy, I suppose. But that's just my experience. But it's for sure that an entire generation, maybe two generations of Americans, just don't feel optimistic about the future, and they have really been given very little reason to feel optimistic. And so, yeah, you would think, great, the government should probably take it over anyway. How could it be worse than it is now? I got news for you. It could be a lot worse than it is now.
Yeah, but Jim, I'd be willing to bet if you asked them to really define what nationalizing an industry means, that they would not be able to comprehend that. I don't think they really know what that means. I think they just think, oh, that just means like it'll be more fair. It's like, no, that's not what it means. So I think that's another thing that their ignorance of how economics works was very on display when I was just teaching really basic, like macroeconomic stuff. I mean, like the most basic of the basic, like supply and demand and stuff like that. They just really couldn't understand it, or just weren't willing to understand it, or maybe just didn't believe it. I don't know.
It's interesting because Trump has been known to sort of badger industries and go after particular companies and so forth. So a lot of people who support Trump clearly must have voted for strongly agree or somewhat agree on that issue. So I don't think they are thinking of sort of the what we know to nationalism to be. I think they're thinking of something different, that you're sort of jawboning, which is a very different thing, of course. Mm-hmm. Although all the government's intrusion in these things is cumulative. You don't get much. You don't get much going back. You get this ratchet, the socialist ratchet, as Margaret Thatcher put it. So it's cumulative, and it becomes more and more oppressive to the economy. And these young people are reacting to the fact that they've grown up in an era where the American economy has been so suppressed that we can't be Americans because, you can build things. Well, you can't when the government won't let you.
Sam,
and that's our problem. You can't even say things in Britain, so it could be worse.
Sam, you and I have talked about this over the years. This idea that everything's a zero-sum game. And I remember when I was teaching about the Gilded Age, and it was the standards from South Carolina were robber barons are terrible. They took advantage of the work and all this stuff. And it's like, well, that's not really the true story of how that happened. So I think that a lot of young people think that everything is a zero-sum game. Bill Gates gets rich off of other people's like misery. No, he doesn't. He gets rich because he provides software that people wanted to buy, or
Right.
or Amazon. Jeff Bezos. He just is this super greedy guy that just takes everyone's money. No, he doesn't. He offers a service that people want that makes their lives better. So that's, I think, another big part of this is the envy factor, the zero-sum game factor, the oppressors versus the oppressed factor, all that kind of stuff. And I tried to always tell my students, guys, if you work hard, and you get a high school education and you don't have a child before you get married, your odds of attaining the American dream are like almost guaranteed. It's when you don't do those three things, or when you start to blame others for your lack of success, that things start to go downhill. So, I mean, I understand that the current economy is not as dynamic as it once was. I think we are moving in the right direction. I'm very happy that we are reshoring some of those high-paying manufacturing jobs. I think that that's going to really help. And I do think that we are on the cusp of this golden age for the American worker, but we're not there yet. And I think in the meantime that we are going to have this struggle between the leftist demagogues like Mandami, who say there's a cost of living crisis in New York City, and the only thing that we can do is have city-run grocery stores and a UBI and free this and free that, when anyone with half a brain knows, well, that's just going to make everything 10 times worse. So I think it's incumbent upon us, and that's why I love what I do, because we get to challenge that, that false narrative. And hopefully we're polls like this, open up people's eyes, and, that's all we can hope for. So I'm going to be the most optimistic person you've ever seen from here on out, guys.
Government suppression of economic
glasses for me.
We're gonna have a new
economic freedom has absolutely demoralized young people, is what this poll says, in my view. And it's the same thing that's happening in Britain and happening across Europe. And we can change this. We have to.
Yeah, we're gonna make a new segment that's gonna be Chris Talgo, like sunshine rising over green hills segment. Drop. Right. And he can take us to that optimistic place. Thank you, Chris. I do appreciate that a lot. We can get kind of down in the dumps here. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much to all of our great viewers here. Sorry, I got distracted looking at the comments of our great viewers. We really enjoy having you guys watching us live and commenting. It's always really fun and lively. But that is all the time that we have today, you guys, unfortunately. So thank you, everyone, for your attention to these matters. We are live every single week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Chris, what do you have to pitch to us to end the show?
Well, it's the start of the NFL season, so I want to say go Bears, and I really hope I win the Heartland Survivor League this year, because that would just make my day.
Absolutely. All right, Jim?
Yeah, go to heartland.org. You can see all of the results of this polling. And in fact, we have 2 more polls that we're releasing next week. But if you go to heartland.org all through the weekend, it'll be one of the 3 featured items right there on the front page. It's fascinating and sometimes horrifying reading, but I think it's important to know this information. So, and we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same channel for the Climate Realism Show.
Thank you, Jim. All right, Sam?
Yes, please go to heartland.org and support the Heartland Institute and send all your friends there and have them support this organization, because we're doing, as you can see, very important work here.
Thank you very much. All right. Guys, listen to all of our great panelists and do what they tell you to do. All right. Oh, before we totally close it out, Jim, did we have an ad read today?
Oh my gosh, we do have an ad read today.
Just kidding. We have a couple more seconds here.
But I don't have it up. You're gonna have to do a little puppet show or something while I.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, hello audience. Let me read audience comments real quick here.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Let's see. Yeah, Christine Laurel says, while those youngsters believe a socialist government would lower their cost of living, I'm sure they have no idea how low the quality of their lifestyle would become. Education is badly needed. Yes, you are absolutely right, Christine. Thank you.
All right, I'm ready now.
Thank you, Scott Clay. All right, there you go, Jim.
Yes, how can we forget? We have a sponsor of this great show
I know.
and also of the Climate Realism Show, and that is Advisor Metals. Now, if you listen to lots of conservative shows like we do, you hear lots of pitches for buying gold and silver and other precious metals, but there are so many companies out there that do that. But we want to tell you why you should trust our sponsor, Advisor Metals, and it's the man who runs the company. His name is Ira Bershatsky. He's the managing member of Advisor Metals, and he doesn't employ those high-pressure tactics that you see from other companies or deceptive marketing ploys like many in big gold. And he also doesn't deal in so-called rare coins. When you buy gold and other precious metals from Advisor Metals, you're dealing in quality bullion, and that is so much better when the time comes to liquidate this valuable physical asset. And when you buy from Advisor Metals, you will have your investment discreetly sent to your very home. And Ira, by the way, is advertising on our program because he is an America First patriot. He does not donate to Democrats. He refuses to work with proxies of the Chinese Communist Party. And he, like us, abhor the machinations and the schemes of the World Economic Forum. And we are very, very proud to have him as a sponsor. So if you want to diversify your investment portfolio and back up your IRA with physical bullion of precious metals, go to climaterealismshow.com/metals, and then you can leave your information there, and Ira will make this whole process very easy for you. Again, climaterealismshow.com/metals, and be sure to tell them that we sent you, because that helps us while you're helping yourself.
I pulled the Jim. All right. And so that was a good way to end the show. Okay. So thank you so much to our audience who stuck around for the ad read. And please use Advisor Metals if you are going to be buying gold and silver. And I highly suggest you do. It's a great way to have a little backup, or just in case things get as bad as they are in Britain. Anyway, so thank you everyone for watching. We will see you again next week.